Hi, I'm Fred McNeil, and thank you for watching QACTV 7. We started a program about 6 months ago, and it's called Thank You for Serving. And what we do, the 3,353 veterans in Queen Anne's County, men and women, we've been interviewing them, having a great time, stories that are unbelievable. Well, today we're going to open a different book. Peter's with me today, who will introduce himself in a second. Not only a veteran, there's a story there, right, Peter? But more importantly, this wonderful event that us in Queen Anne's County are invited to, and I hope you take part in, March 29th, that's Good Friday, easy to remember, 6 to 7, and we'll go into details, but that's what we're going to do today. Peter, thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome, Fred.
Thank you for your service. Now, tell us, let's start this wonderful event, which I was fortunate enough to luck into 2 years ago. What's happening March 29th up in Chestertown?
Well, Fred, on March 29th, which is National Vietnam Veterans Day.
Now, Peter, let's go in. I was just with a group of 30 veterans. Nobody knows about it.
Right.
So give me, when did it start? What, is it a national holiday or just a recognition day or what?
No, it's a national holiday.
It's a national
Unfortunately, it's not well known. But about 10 years ago, the Department of Defense decided that there was a wrong that needed to be corrected. And that wrong was where we treated the Vietnam veterans who came back from Vietnam and other places in the world where they serviced during that Vietnam period.
Sure.
And they weren't treated well. And it was not a good day for our country. And they felt that there's something ought to be done about it. So they created a thing called the Vietnam War Commemoration.
And this is actually a federal government, this is passed through Congress,
It's under the Department of Defense.
Okay.
And the bill was signed into law by Congress, and 2 senators signed it, various parts of it. So, two presidents signed it. And that created this program to try to find, speak to, and actually thank Vietnam-era veterans from all over the country at a time when there was a real need to bring people together.
So it's a thank you, not just to Vietnam veterans, but Vietnam-era veterans.
The period, because they wanted to make it inclusive. So they said, what we'll do is, it'll start with the first American advisor went to Vietnam in November of 1955.
Oh, 55, wow.
And the last battle of the Vietnam War, the USS Mayaguez incident that you may remember.
President Ford rescuing the ship, yeah.
Precisely, and that was May 15th, 1975.
Oh, wow.
So it was actually a 20-year period. They also wanted to make sure that they didn't exclude anybody. So it wasn't just recognizing people who went in country.
Right.
They were people who served in uniform during that period in any of the military services wherever in the world they may have served. Because as we know, you didn't have a choice in those days as to where you would serve.
Right.
So if you signed your hand and served and put on the cloth,
I want to say thank you.
then there was a chance that you might have been sent to Vietnam. But even if you didn't, there are many, many stories that I've heard, I'm sure you have as well, of people that never were in Vietnam, that never had an opportunity to do any of the things that they were being accused of, and yet they were still treated badly.
Given a hard time. So we're talking any branch of the service. You could have been in Germany, you could have been in South America, you could have been anywhere. That 20-year period, this is what we're thanking. We're thanking that particular of the men and women who served in uniform.
That's exactly right.
That's terrific. That's great.
And I'm included in that group because I went into the Marine Corps in 1966. I live now in Chestertown.
Right.
But at that time, I was in New York, and the Marine Corps Reserves was my choice. I suppose, to be honest, I was hedging my bet.
Well, you're trying to, you did a smart move, smart,
but
yes.
But once I got out of Paris Island, I decided to sign up for a helicopter crew chief. I extended my active duty. I got out of active duty in 1967 as a helicopter crew chief. I served on UH-34s and CH-46s.
Now, remind everybody,
Well, the UH-34 was actually a Korean War helicopter.
okay, so an oldie but goodie.
An oldie but goodie. It looked like a bumblebee to some people. Okay. And then the 46, CH-46, was the first of the jet engines. It had a GE jet engine in it and was larger.
Is that the Chinook? Or no?
No, that was not the Chinook. So I started, of course, I was flying in those. I was meeting once a month. I was flying in them. And, of course, I heard the news about all of the losses that the helicopter crew chiefs were experiencing.
And remind those that don't know, what does a Marine helicopter crew chief actually, what's your job? What was your job?
Well, there's two things. First of all, you're the on-plane mechanic.
Okay. You fix it. You fix it.
I was trained that if there was any accidents where when you were not at any mechanical incidents, when you were not at your base, I was trained to be able to fix them and to get it back to base. And also to make sure that it was operational along with, of course, the pilots were responsible.
Pretty heavy responsibility, right?
Well,
crew and ship.
It was something that I really enjoyed.
Good.
I liked being a mechanic, but I also liked flying. In addition to that, I was the principal door gunner.
Okay.
So we would have a 50 caliber mounted in the door. We flew with the door open. And in training, we would go out over the water most of the time because I was on the East Coast. And then we would throw a 55-gallon drum out, and we would take passes over and shoot.
So not only are you worried about the mechanical part of the thing, you have to stand by an open, help me out, an open door with a machine gun. Now, I'm sure you're strapped in, I'm sure.
You are.
But still, the ground fire you would have received, and just the I was born a chicken, Peter. I mean, no, I'm not going near an open door of a flying aircraft.
Well, I will admit that one of the things they asked us as part of the qualifications to become a door gunner is, do you really intend to fall out? No. And we all agreed that we didn't.
We don't want
so that qualified us to be a door gunner. But in fact, that was what my job was.
Okay. Now, explain to me, you're actually strapped in. How a door gunner? What we say? Obviously, you're holding the weapon in your, right. on a tripod or whatever. Is there a safety belt?
We had a harness.
Oh, a harness.
And then we were connected by a strap to a solid hook inside.
Okay.
But it allowed us enough leeway to be able to go around the cabin, because actually the third job was that we were responsible for any troops, Marines primarily, but sometimes other services who were in the cabin as our passengers. And our job was to make sure that they were either strapped in, ready to get out, were under control,
following mission
and their
procedure.
safety.
Okay, so the mechanical part of the helicopter, a door gunner, and you also, hey, I got troops in here. I got to babysit a bit, right? Not an easy job. What rank were you at that point?
Well, I started off, of course, as a PFC, but I got out 6 years later as a Lance Corporal in E4.
Okay, so an E4. Okay, that's an awful responsibility on a poor E4. Probably making $99 a month like I was when I started out in the Army the same year, 66.
I don't remember, to be honest with you, but it wasn't a lot.
It wasn't a lot.
But that wasn't why we were there anyway.
Okay, so you were talking reserves, Marines. Did you go active at all, or you had better sense?
I was expecting, for the most of the 6 years that I was actually qualified, I was expecting to get
called up.
To get called up and sent to Vietnam.
Okay.
I didn't get called up, but 450,000 Marines did get called up during that period that I was in. Well,
Peter, you remember
reserves.
like I do, it was like a scandal. Many of the AFL in those days and NFL football players were getting themselves by hook or crook in reserve units, being expected to be not called up, and the trick was played on, hey guys, I need you somewhere, right? Goodbye. I mean, you couldn't count on what's going on right now. I mean, there's an awful lot of reserve units that are being called up to do whatever we're doing, right? And so you're always on the edge there, right?
Well, I think to be honest and clear about it, I think most of the people, even then, including me, who signed up as a reserve to hedge, but were prepared to go
if you had to, you
called.
go. Sure.
And as I said, I truly expected to be called. And to this day, as I sit here, having lasted, through the period and been able to lead a good life and have children and grandchildren.
It's a good experience.
It worked out for me.
Good.
It didn't work out for
many, and I'm glad it worked out for you.
Thank
Now let's go back to our event March 29th. So the federal government, with the Department of Defense, they said, look at all you men and women who served over this 20-year period. We would like to say thank you to you. Now, how do we say thank you to them?
Well, the first thing they did, DOD did, was create this organization. It's based in Washington. It's run by retired senior officers of the various militaries. And I happened to meet one of them, and he told me about this, and I was in fact invited to a ceremony where I received my pin.
Oh, you got your pin. Okay.
Which is right here.
And explain to the audience, what is it? The pin basically just says what?
The pin basically has features to it, including an eagle, which of course is part of our national symbols.
American, sure.
It has stars and stripes in it in the background, which of course is part. And it has words on the back that say, "In thanks from a grateful nation for your sacrifice." And it's pinned onto veterans of that period, specifically Vietnam veterans, and it goes over your heart.
Well, all the veterans, if I remember 2 years ago, they were called out if you'd like to step out. And like you said, they were lined up, and I forget, like you said, somebody pinned it on.
Right.
And I keep it on my golf cap, and believe me, I play a lot of golf, so
people
I'm very proud of it, and I want people to see
Yep.
it. Oh, that's terrific. Now, so what happens? In Chestertown, where?
In Chestertown, at Memorial Park,
Now, where
which
is that?
right in the center of Chestertown, adjacent to Fountain Park, which is the widely recognized...
Right downtown.
Downtown.
The fountain, the bank, et cetera, et cetera. It's
Exactly.
right there. Okay.
And there's a small piece of real estate there and that has grass on it, and therefore is by
There's a
definition
cannon
a
there.
park.
Isn't there a cannon there?
There is
Yes.
a cannon there.
Okay.
And there are memorials for all of the wars in which Kent County people, Chestertown, of course, being the county seat,
Sure.
representing the county, that all of the people and names of many of them that are on those
On that little
memorials.
stretch.
And there is a Vietnam memorial there too.
Okay.
And so we have it there.
So what we're talking about, 29th of this year, March, 6 to 7. You guys are real good. It's an hour. I mean, we don't lollygag it. We don't have a lot of
No.
people running for this or running for that. You have some speakers, but it's right and very prompt. 6 to 7. Parking is easy. You might have to walk, but that's not a problem. You have 50 or 100 chairs out, I believe.
Yep.
So those, if you need to sit, get there a little bit early and get in a seat, okay? Guest speakers?
Yep. We have had guest speakers in the past, and this year we're going to have a gentleman who is a Vietnam veteran who is also the Chief of Staff to General Colin Powell.
Oh, terrific, okay.
And he's going to give his view of the Vietnam War experience.
Now, if I remember, you had a guest speaker or two, then you had a lot of members of the local clergy spoke. Are we going to do that again? Or?
We always start with a prayer and end with a prayer.
Okay.
We will have the singing of the national anthem, as you'd expect.
And you have a dangerous vocal group coming,
We
Peter.
have what I understand is going to be somebody that could receive an award on TV one day.
Probably should be sent out of the country, but...
Your group of veteran...
Well, we're very proud. We have a local group, Nancy Cook, who taught choir at Queen Anne's County High School for 30 years. And I never know how many are going to show up. It's called the Queen Anne's County Vietnam Veterans Glee Club / MASH Unit 21617. So the unexpected, but we enjoy doing it, and we really appreciate you inviting us.
Well,
Thank you. Thank you.
The whole point of this is to make veterans of the Vietnam era comfortable, because the truth is, the reality that this whole organization has found in the last decade is that do you know that there were 9 million men and women in uniform during that 20-year period?
Right, 9 million.
9 million. About 2.5 million of them were in country. The rest served someplace.
Somewhere else, yeah.
But there are expected that there are about 6 million still alive.
Out of the 9 million.
And many of those people, too many, will not come out and be recognized.
That's why I'm so glad you came, Peter. The hardest thing I'm finding in Queen Anne's County, I'm sure you are, We know there's about 3,500 veterans. We've been able to tap in to only about 10% of them. And out of that 10%, 10% of that 10% will come to meetings, book clubs, glee clubs.
Right.
A lot of people say, it's a phase of my life, I'm moving on. That's fine. But you can still be thanked and honored, which I know what you guys are doing, which is fantastic.
And that's exactly right. That's our principal purpose. I have had the chance, having been involved in this now for about 4 years, the last 3 in Chestertown with this event. There are people that I've talked to that have stopped me right away and say,
I'm not showing up.
I don't want to talk about it, and I'm not showing up, and I don't want any more of these hollow thanks.
Yeah.
Because what's done is done. And I say to you, Fred, imagine what it would be like for any of us individuals, and of course there are some of us, who have been angry about something for 50 years that has to have affected almost every part of your life.
Oh, yeah.
And what I've personally seen from our experience here and other places that I've been invited to where this ceremony has gone on, is that there have been people that have stepped forward out of the dark, sometimes with real serious reluctance,
Right.
and yet found a release from this because across from them, in some stage, or in our case on the street in Chestertown, there's been a Vietnam veteran or a senior official who looks them in the eye and says, thank you for your sacrifice and your service.
Nothing but
Welcome
smiles.
home.
Oh, yeah. And the nice thing about, I'm sorry, go please. Now, the nice thing about your ceremony, I want to make sure the audience knows that those who would like to participate as veterans or spouses, and we'll talk about that in a second, it's so low key. There's no pressure. The MC or whoever who spoke simply said, those of you who'd like to step up, you can. No one was forced to. You don't have to stand up and tell stories or this or that.
Nope.
You walked up, so opinion. It seemed like there was a goodie bag last. Do I remember a goodie? Am I wrong?
Well, no, there wasn't. What we did do, because of the generosity of a store in Chestertown, Bespoke Chocolates, which is
that's
some
what it
people
was.
may
Okay,
know.
yes, yes.
They were kind enough to create a chocolate in a box
just for that event.
said, welcome home, Vietnam
Yes, that
veterans.
was it.
And we gave those to all those people.
Peter, what I find most amazing about the event that's going on in Chestertown, which is open to all the Queen Anne's County people, the numbers. When I went up 2 years ago, I expected there'd be 25 old guys sitting around, and then they'll go to Legion and have a beer. I didn't do a head count, but it must have been 200 or 300 people. I mean, the whole area was just packed of veterans, spouses of veterans, children of veterans, who were all invited. So the word got out, and it's a non-threatening, I mean, it's so, I agree with you. A lot of the veterans, I constantly hear, Fred, I'm not going to do a membership. I don't want to have a commandant or have to do this. No, you don't have to do any of this. You show up, listen. If you want to, step up and be pinned, and that's it.
That's part of the way that this is intended to be run.
Okay.
It isn't unique to us. We don't take reservations.
Right.
You don't have to register your name. No. And in fact, we don't call out anybody by name, even if we knew they are. And when you come forward, the person won't ask you your name. No. They just thank you because it is a private thing. It probably is for all veterans. But in the particular case of the Vietnam veterans, because of the way they were treated, it was different.
Okay.
We treated people better after World War I, after World War II. Certainly after the most recent conflicts that we've had, we've welcomed people back with parades and things like that. There was none of that. Those of us who are old enough or who've read our history know this. There was none of that. There was quite the opposite. People were spit on.
Nobody spoke about it. One of the people you met in our veterans group simply said, we were told, don't put down on your applications that you're a Vietnam veteran. I mean, can you imagine that?
People, servicemen and women coming back on an airplane would change their clothes in the bathroom at the first one they could come to so that they weren't. And I had actually a friend of mine in Chestertown who said, and I had a wig. because my short haircut would
give
give
it
me
as a
away.
giveaway. As a giveaway.
So this wasn't a joke. This was
sad.
impactful
Sad.
in a serious way, and that's why the government and the Department of Defense decided that this was a right that needed to be wrong, as I said earlier. So it is quiet. We have very few speakers. Last year we had very short speakers from about 5 or 6 Vietnam veterans who told their own impression of the experience in the war or when they returned, but it was also much from the heart that it didn't require many words.
Good.
You could tell from everything about their demeanor what they were experiencing, and I think the people who were in the audience,
Appreciate it.
who were the ones that we wanted to reach out to, could feel that.
Now, Peter, we've talked about the people that were in uniform in that 10 period, men and women. Who else? I know at a meeting I was with last week, I was really impressed by the fact that you said we also want to see the spouses there,
That's
the children there. So who can show up? Who will get something out of this, do you think?
I hope that anybody who even knows a veteran, particularly people who had family members who may have died since Vietnam. We have a pin that was created by the Department of Defense specifically for spouses of men and women who have died since the war and who would have been eligible to come forward but aren't alive to do that.
And so the spouses can receive the
Absolutely.
award.
But let's not forget for a second the most important people who can't step forward. And those are the KIA and the MIA. We don't believe there are any MIA. This is under the direct
Missing in action.
From Kent County or Queen Anne County.
Okay.
And we've spoken directly through this organization to the DOD, where of course they have a big office that has been tracking that for many years. There are 5 KIA, killed in action families.
From
They're
Kent
called
County?
Gold Star in Kent County. I don't yet know how many there may be in Queen Anne County, but we're going to find that out.
Oh, and I can get that information
And we're
to you
going
if
to
you
work
like.
with you to find that out. But there are 5 Gold Star families. Some of your viewers may not know what that really means. It started actually in World War I.
Okay.
If you were a family who had a family member, mostly sons in those days, who was in the war in uniform, you would hang a banner in your window with a blue star in it. And that said, I have a family member at risk. If that person was killed in action, it became a Gold Star. And to this day, we always ask for any of the family members, and we reach out to them because, of course, in our case, it's small. We only have 5.
It's easy to do, right?
We reach out to the remaining family members, ask them to come, and then we recognize them because we'll never forget them.
Good for you. Good for you. Now, Peter, we've got about 7 minutes left. Let me ask you this. Someone's watching this show, and remind everybody, it's taking place March 29th of this year. That's good for easy to remember. It's Good Friday. That's the way it falls upon. It's 6 to 7 in Chestertown. Go to the fountain, look to your left, and you can see it.
Yep.
Is there a website, or where would they go, first of all, if they want more information on the event, and 2, if they want to contact you or your organization?
Well, we don't have a website.
That's okay.
This is a
Low
lot
key.
like your organization.
Exactly.
But we have partners in this, local partners. There are 3 Kent County American Legions, as an example, in Chestertown, Betterton, and Rock Hall. There's an American Legion in Centerville here in Queen Anne's County. There is the Marine Corps League here in Centerville. That
John Kozer, have you dealt with John Kozer yet? It's okay, just somebody I know is in it.
I have not.
Oh, it's good. No.
The Daughters of the American Revolution are partners, and they have a Kent County sector. And then we also have the Grand Army of the Republic at Sumner Hall.
So you get a lot of partners, yes.
We have a lot of partners, and that's how we continue to reach out.
Great.
But there is a website in general about this whole program, and that is Vietnam War 50th, 50th.org. That is that anybody can go on to that website and you would see the whole program.
Peter, can you give that website one more time?
It is Vietnam War 50th, 50th.
And that would give them a general overview of what this is all about.
Of what this is all about.
Okay. If someone's, do you want donations? Do you want, you talked about the chocolate, but are you looking for help in terms of either it's setting up chairs? I know you've got the fraternity doing a wonderful job with that. Do you need help? Do you need donations or what? You just want people to show up?
The answer is we want people to show up.
Okay.
We're fortunate because both Kent County and the town of Chestertown have provided a little money this year. In the past, it's just been by private donations.
Right now. You're fine.
You mentioned the fraternity. Kappa Sigma fraternity at Washington College is a national fraternity that turns out has a mission, national mission of supporting veterans organization. And those young men have come for the second year, and that they're going to do what's called a missing man ceremony, which is for those KIAs, MIAs. People will find that to be very moving.
Yes.
There's a formality to it that's important. We're going to do it exactly the same way that the military services themselves do it.
Good. And I was impressed. They were at your organizational meeting last week, two gentlemen from the fraternity. I mean, their charter is, let's help veterans. And I hear all this nonsense from, oh, young people don't care. Are you kidding me? These were two young men, they must have been 20, 21 years old. Hey, we'll come meet with you, we'll set up chairs, we'll do whatever we need to do, right?
And they do.
Yeah.
And they do. And then we're going to, of course, going to have the commanders of the American Legions. We're going to have the region of the DAR are there. The chief of police of Chestertown will be there. The sheriff of Kent County will be there, and they have been for the last 3 years. So there's been no resistance to this idea at any level.
That's great. It's great.
Our goal now is let's reach out to those people that we haven't been able to reach yet. And so my appeal to people that may be watching, if you're a veteran and you've attended and you've been pinned, thank you for coming forward. Please come again and bring somebody who hasn't. If you're a family member, encourage your family member who may be a veteran to come and be recognized. We appreciate how difficult it might be for them, but I hope that they'll find some peace and some acceptance from their country from this process.
And it's a great program, and remind everybody, this is Vietnam-era Veterans Appreciation Day. It's going to be March 29th.
Correct.
6 to 7, right downtown Chestertown by the water fountain. Parking's not a problem. It's just a delightful, and there's no pushing and shoving. It's just people being very gentle and very solemn. Well, it's a nice event.
I think the word is respectful, because that's exactly what they should be, and they have been.
Well, Peter, thank you for coming. Our time's about up.
Thank you,
And we want you to come on every year, and we're going to brag about this program, all righty?
Well, you're very
And thank you for your service also.
And thank you for yours, sir.
Thank you. My name's Fred McNeil. Thank you for watching QACTV 7. Thank you for serving. My time's up. Thank you for your time. We're going to see you next time. And to all the veterans, thank you for serving. And that wasn't